All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Happy Saturday. It is May 20th. A lot of Canadians will be camping this weekend, May 24th weekend. So we're hoping to catch those of you who aren't out on the camping trail. Now, tonight's episode, Trudeau investigates himself and Ukraine inches closer to defeat. This is a great one for you tonight. We got a couple of articles to look at from the mainstream, and we have some alternative news for you to look at. Because part of what we do is to digest the mainstream media here, but also what we like to do is give you alternative sources that you can get your news from, because it's not just going to be coming from us, and we don't provide breaking news as such. We like to help you digest mainstream media news. I will mention that we are live on Rumble right now, and Rumble is a much better alternative for a platform. We'll just say that. You can have a much broader conversation on Rumble. You don't have to worry about censorship. We have 3 different YouTube channels that we roll through. We are live on YouTube right now. When this one gets censored, we'll have to roll to the next one. It gets tough trying to rebuild platforms after being deplatformed. So on Rumble, you don't need that. Which is nice. So with that in mind, guys, we're going to get started tonight. It is Trudeau investigates himself, because obviously that's something he would do, and Ukraine inches closer to defeat. You might not hear that if you're watching mainstream media, of course. I wouldn't suspect any of you have heard anything about Ukraine being anywhere near defeat. If you're watching anything mainstream, I will let you know now, redacted news, they're on YouTube, but they are also on Rumble. Much better source for news than anything you're going to see mainstream. So the first part of our episode, Trudeau investigates himself. What does that mean? Well, he's appointed a special counsel, and their intention is to decide whether or not there's enough evidence to suggest that there should be an investigation into the most recent election. Now, who is the person who is heading this special counsel? David Johnston is his name. If you are following Canadian politics, you will know that David Johnston was You'll know that David Johnston is a former governor general. He was a governor general up until 2017. He was vacated from that position, and Mary Simon took over from there. That is mentioned here in the first article we're going to look at. Now, does David Johnston know Justin Trudeau? Do they have a personal relationship? We're going to find that out. Some of you might already know this. So let's dive right into it. David Johnston, to reveal Tuesday coming whether or not there is a public inquiry in foreign interference on the most recent federal election. Right off the bat, Pierre Poilievre refused to meet the former governor general, saying Johnston's job as special rapporteur is fake. By the way, guys, that's the terminology they're using. He's a special rapporteur. So Pierre recognizes that this guy has a personal relationship with Trudeau, and it is utter nonsense to have him investigating anything. Imagine if hold on. Let's look a little further first. He's going to reveal on Tuesday whether there should be an investigation into Beijing's election interference. Here he is posted here. I believe he was born in 1743, but the comment section can correct me on that. So Justin Trudeau appointed former Governor General Johnston as the government's independent special rapporteur on foreign interference. The government's term. So he's going to review evidence and then decide that a formal public inquiry is needed or not. This is not his first time as an adjudicator. He did this in 2007 under Harper. Ironically, Harper had a similar type of situation, but he was investigating former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. Keep in mind, Brian Mulroney, Stephen Harper, Justin Trudeau, they've all been briefed by CSIS about Chinese interference, and they've, by CSIS, not by allegers or not by whistleblowers or not by political types or news types, by CSIS, Canadian Securities Intelligence Commission. And the Conservatives have been kind of just criticizing this, citing his special relationship with the Prime Minister's family. Now, he calls him a ski bunny, a cottage neighbor. All right? So, if we get rid of that and go to CTV to find out what does that mean, cottage buddy, ski buddy. Let's go over to CTV. Let's check in with these psychopaths and see what they're talking about. Again, here he is. Birth date was 1743, I believe. It's the kind of encounter that can only happen in Ottawa. He talks about his grandchildren playing with Trudeau's children on the grounds of Rideau Hall. Because, in fact, Mr. Johnston is basically, or was at least, a tenant to the Trudeau family because they had to move while Rideau Hall was being renovated, or while 24 Sussex was being renovated. So, here we go. This is the paragraph that tells you why the Conservatives have been laughing and not taking this appointment seriously. This is a quote. We had two of them there the day before yesterday, and Sharon and the family have become good friends. Our friendship with Mr. Trudeau goes back to children's days, when our 5 daughters and he and his beautiful 2 brothers skied together at Mont Tremblant. Johnston knew Trudeau's father, former Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and Johnston was a vice chancellor of McGill in Montreal at the time. So when the opposition leader Pierre Poilievre, and I don't holy smoker, I'm just checking in the comments. Amazing. A big conflict of interest, yes, 100%, Ruby. It's not even Ruby, sorry. It's not even close. Massive conflict of interest. This guy and his grandchildren played with Trudeau and his children and all this stuff. He's a buddy of Pierre and Justin. The whole Trudeau Foundation, we already know about their corruption there. So now this is the man, David Johnston, who's tasked. Again, our friendship with Mr. Trudeau goes back to children's days, when our 5 daughters and he and his 2 brothers skied together at Mont Tremblant. This is David Johnston's wife, Sharon, speaking to a CTV reporter, Robert Fife, talking about their long-lasting relationship with the Trudeau family. So again, now that I've got some people in here, imagine, if you will, because this is a hypothetical for everybody else. It's unfortunately not a hypothetical for our politicians. Imagine, if you will, that you're accused of a crime. Imagine you're accused of a crime. It doesn't matter how heinous or not heinous it is. The point will still come across. You're accused of a crime and you go and decide, I'm going to get my family friend to look at the documents that I provide him about these allegations that have come against me, and I'm going to let this man decide whether or not I'm guilty of any sort of crime, or whether it even deserves an investigation into whether or not I'm guilty of these crimes. Think about the Spanish cojones that it would require to make such a statement. Now, unfortunately, our politicians do this all the time. And our police do this all the time. If you're Canadian and you're watching this and you remember what happened in Nova Scotia with the RCMP, when that was all over, they got a board of police officers from Ontario to look into the situation that occurred and developed in Nova Scotia to find out if those police officers did anything wrong and would be required, to go under further investigation and charges be laid. They asked cops to investigate cops to find out if cops did anything wrong. Just like in Parliament, when something goes wrong, a special committee gets struck and members of parties that did the things wrong come together and decide whether or not they did anything wrong and whether or not it merits an investigation, punishment. Keeping in mind, guys, I have to keep saying this. CSIS, a former CSIS member, stood before a House Committee on Procedures and testified that every single government since Brian Mulroney has been corrupted by the Chinese, by their officials here in Canada. Every single one. And not only that, every single one of them were briefed by CSIS, which means every single one of them chose to either ignore or, worse, use the information they were given to their advantage. And Rain, that's a great question. I think the answer most people won't like, but elections never have really been open, honest, transparent, fair as they're promoted. They never have been. And as in more modern times and more recent times, it's only gotten worse. And that's all I'll say on that. Now, we are streaming on Rumble. And as we transition the conversation here, we're going to start talking about Ukraine inching closer to defeat. We've got some things to look at there. In due time, we'd like to be able to stream only to Rumble. And we're not picking Rumble over any other alternative platform. It's Canadian, and that's the one we've chosen. There's no censorship there. We've never been censored. So we're trying to grow that platform. And the reason is you can have a much more open discussion there. It sucks having to be on Facebook and YouTube and keep getting strikes and keep having to rebuild platforms and switch to alternative accounts in order to be able to stream and all this kind of stuff. So we just put a comment there in the section. That's the link to the Rumble stream. If you're using Rumble at all, and I mean, you can just use it through your browser. You don't need the app or the account. We'd urge you to go look at that stream there and watch it through Rumble, just to help us build that platform, because we'd much rather stream there and be able to be open with all of our discussion with you and not have to self-censor at all. And if you are already on Rumble, there's a link coming here now to our channel as well. If you want to go give us a follow, we'd really appreciate that as well, because again, it'll help us have more honest conversations. And there comes our Rumble channel as well. And yeah, you get censored everywhere else. Ruby, same thing. I've got 3 personal Facebook accounts. We've got multiple Facebook groups for NL Media and an NL page. It's unfortunate, but that's how it is. We have 3 YouTube accounts. Having to cycle through those does suck. Anyways, that's enough ranting about that and self-promotion. I'll tell you this, if you want to join the stream and have your say, because that's something else we like to do here, I'm going to put that link in here for you now. It's We the People Media here at NL Media. It's We the People. And if it's going to be We the People, it needs to be by the people to be for the people. So if you want to join the stream and have your say, here's a link. It's a StreamYard link. You'll pop in backstage, and I can bring you on one at a time, and you can have your say. So we're going to get rid of our mainstream media ones here, and we're going to start now. Ukraine inches closer to defeat. If you listen to mainstream media at all, they'll tell you that any day Russia's about to collapse, that they're using 1980s era leftover Soviet equipment, and they're running out of resources, and the people are just about to turn on Putin. And if we just give them another $6 billion and a few more F-16s, we will win this war. That is the mainstream narrative. And unfortunately, that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, that being said, I'm not here to tell you that the alternative message is truth. Seemingly, based on the resources they're willing to provide, it's closer to truth, because the mainstream media will often give you uncited sources, unnamed sources, anonymous sources, which are basically their journalists in the background writing an email. And that's as much credibility as you're able to give them if they keep doing this and keep getting caught lying. So with that in mind, and speaking of the mainstream media, and Ukraine's inching closer to defeat, the G7 is meeting. Why is the G7 meeting, do you think? Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that BRICS is meeting in August in South Africa? Do you think it's possible that the G7 is shaking in their proverbial boots at the growth of the BRICS nations? The BRICS alliance has strengthened immaculately. They are about to announce their own new currency backed by gold or other precious metals, as they put it. And now the G7 summit are meeting. They're in Japan. And here is poster boy Volodymyr Zelensky. And I had no idea there was two Y's at the end of his name, unless that's a typo. Here is, and again, like, think about the propaganda, wartime propaganda here, guys. Poster boy Zelensky is just hugging it out with two clowns, exactly. Hugging it out with the bros. They're in, and here we go. We're going to have a look at where they are and what they're doing. That is Britain's Prime Minister. Let me ask you something. Does it make sense to anybody that Great Britain, England, will say, Great Britain's Prime Minister is Rishi Sunak? Pictures not needed. I'm just going to ask in the comments if you're here listening. Does that make sense to anybody? Anyways, so Rishi Sunak is back on to you here, giving the, kind of fake black guy, cool guy, handshake, bro hug type thing. And they're at the Grand Prince Hotel in Hiroshima. I don't know. Is it irony or just humorous that the G7 is meeting in a place that got nuked? I don't know. That might just be humor, satire, irony, or maybe I'm just reading too much into it. Anyways, the G7, first of all, again, is Ukraine in the G7? Why is President Zelensky at a G7 summit, a G7 meeting? I'd love somebody to give me a shot there. Now, the real reason for him being at this conference, this meeting, is that the West, the G7, has put all their eggs in Ukraine. 100% in every egg in the Western that the West owns is in the Ukraine basket. You'll see later that they are, like, America's devaluing what they've already given Ukraine in terms of in terms of military equipment and products. They're devaluing it so that they can give more now, because they've only allotted that they can give, this many billion. So now they're going back in hindsight and quote unquote retrospect and devaluing what they've already given, so that there's a little bit more room that they can give a little bit more of precious American tax-paying dollars, money laundering, as Rudy puts it, to a neo-Nazi regime that's well known to be neo-Nazi. Let's be honest, people. Everyone, even in the mainstream media, has been saying this about Ukraine right up until this new conflict broke out. Even though this war has been going on since 2014, again, mainstream media is not going to tell you that. And as this guy points out here, for those of you that don't know, Zelensky has a background in acting. Does that remind you of anyone? This person that he's hugging it out with may as well be Justin Trudeau, and this may as well be a set with cameras and a director looking at these people right now. And of course, does it remind you of anyone, a drama teacher or something along those lines? They've committed to intensifying our diplomatic, financial, humanitarian, and military support for Ukraine. Just think about that. Does anybody know how many billions Ukraine has received from Western nations in order to fight Russia? Does anybody know how many billions it is? I know that there was one package that was $6 billion that came from America. I think we can safely say, based on that all the other Western nations that have provided funding would tally up about $4 billion, and we can give a rough estimate that there's been $10 billion given to Ukraine from the West. And maybe that sounds a little too high. I don't know. I'm just trying to put a figure on it. And the figure doesn't really matter. The fact that it's 1 billion, my point still stands. If someone in the comments wants to figure out, or knows exactly what it is, by all means, please put it here. Now, with that in mind, whatever that figure is, at this meeting, the leaders committed to intensifying diplomatic, which is bullshit, just more sanctions. Russia's not allowed to have McDonald's, whatever. Financial, humanitarian, and military support for Ukraine. They're going to try to increase the cost to Russia and those supporting the effort. They're also calling on China to use its influence with Russia to stop the war in Ukraine. Guys, Russia and China are the leaders of the new world. The BRICS alliance is about to take over global dominance. The Americans and the American dollar are no longer going to be the big boys on the streets. To try to suggest that you're going to call on China to get Russia to stop their aggression is ludicrous. This whole aggression is part of crippling the West, and they're doing a good job. It's a proxy war. It's meant to cripple the West, and look at what it's doing. Look at our previous episodes on the BRICS alliance. We've shown you the graphs, guys. The BRICS alliance has already surpassed the G7 countries in economic output, and they are not even using their own currency at that point. Since then, many other countries have joined BRICS, and BRICS is now announcing their own currency is going to be used. They're going to create a new currency. They've got Russia, China, India. They're going to have most of the Muslim Middle Eastern nations oil producing. They've got Brazil. Guys, this is not good. Mexico, members of NAFTA here, or the new NAFTA that came about. Mexico is looking to join this. We are toast. Asking China to stop Russian aggression is laughable. They want to add more sanctions to try to put more crippling pressure on Russia. Now, guys, with that in mind, from the mainstream and from the G7 virtue signaling beta male leaders that we have, let's take a look at something that's an alternative source of news. Now, again, I'm not promoting these people. I personally do watch a fair amount of their content. They're on YouTube and they're on Rumble. and there will be links for their stuff put in the comments here. But this clip very specifically about Ukraine and Russia and what some military personnel are saying that obviously, again, are not being reported on the mainstream. This is a 10 to 20 minute clip where obviously we're not going to be listening to all of it. I just want you to hear the first little bit here, and I can give you the links. And if you like what you're hearing, please go check them out and follow and subscribe them, like what they're doing. The main thing here, guys, is that you support what you like, support what is good. It doesn't take much to like, to share, to follow something. That's not a big commitment, but it helps the person on the other end, the people creating the content and providing it and down the line. So let's look here. Again, we got ads because it's Rumble. Quality ahead of its time, apparently. So let's go. Sorry there, folks. Just a technical glitch. 1 second. Yes, redacted on YouTube, by all means. They are on Rumble as well. Take two. Here we go.
Or right now, those are not my words. The multiple military officials who've just penned a new piece in the New York Times calling end this disaster. We'll get to a second. But overnight, Putin just launched his biggest attack of the war so far. Analysts are saying the amount, the size, the scope was by far the largest attack since the start of this war. According to multiple reports this morning that we've been piecing together from different sources, overnight and into early daylight hours, Russian aerospace started pounding, started viewing NATO targets. These are NATO targets because who's running this war? It's not Ukraine. It's NATO. And so they started hitting these NATO targets near Odessa. These targets are NATO staging ground. At Steve Depot Ministry admits that over 20 towns right now, this broadcast, and in our cities without power right now because of these overnight and into this morning Russian airstrikes. So here is this strike that the areas, these are in the darkened supplies in Odessa and other parts of the country. This is in the Nikolaev area. According to reports, more than 10 NATO shipment arrivals landed at these storage facilities. This equipment within of Ukraine then used these to new Donbas region, which they think that Ukraine, even under all this attack, hitting all of their ammunition depots and everything else, they still managed to fire on the Donbas and still target residents.
Now, NATO targets in Ukraine. Why does NATO have these targets in Ukraine, or these factories in Ukraine to begin with? Because this is a proxy war, as many in the comments have alluded to, and nobody in mainstream is going to tell you this, guys. And that's why it's important to share out. And I'm not telling you to share my own stream. Yeah, it'd be great if people did. But I'm talking specifically about people like Redacted right now and other alternative media sources that you have. These are the things that need to be shared out so other people get to see them. If people only see mainstream sources, they're only going to believe what they see. There's a point at my family's house now. What I do when I get links from news sources like that I want my family to see, I put it on my laptop and I plug my HDMI cable into a big TV and I play it through the TV and I make it look like it's a news clip on the TV. And my family members will sit down and listen to it. It's the perception of credibility, we'll say, that the mainstream has this cathedral media. This is the perception they have. So you got to help other accounts like these guys build so that they get to be able to have the same sort of sway in the conversation. And I missed a comment here while I was ranting. I'm going to post it now. It's a long one. Taking down the Western world unless people become informed and educated to stop it, right? And you have to start with your own communities. So that's what we're doing here at NL Media. But this war in Ukraine, guys, this is about the changing of this world order. And I'm not talking about, and we can have this discussion likely on Rumble, not here on Facebook. We can talk about the whole cabal issue, but right now it's just about global powers, okay? China and Russia and India and Brazil specifically as main ones right now, plus heavyweight hitters like Saudi Arabia who produce and control the majority of the oil that gets used. Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Mexico, again, more oil. These guys are all forming an alliance opposing us, the West, Canada, America, what we consider to be the new the global power, right? This is a tactical takedown off the West. The war is a proxy for it. It's happening on many different levels. You can call it spiritual as well, financially, physically. And at the end of the day, I'm 33. In a decade, before my kids are fully grown adults on their own, Canada will have become a second world nation. 100%. There will be a global alliance with a new world currency backed by precious metals that involves the majority of the world's population, the majority of the world's oil, the majority of the world's resources, and we will be left holding our you-know-what in our hand with our pants around our ankles, and that's it. And we will have done it to ourselves. Take it from a Newfoundlander. We already did it to ourselves here in Newfoundland. We already let this go. This island is gone. Canada has already taken full possession of this and ruined this island. They're doing the same thing to the West now. And it's up to you and me to stop it. Nobody else. No politicians help us. No Pierre Poilievre's help us. It's you and I always. The only us versus them that ever exists is us versus them, people versus government. End of story. So with that in mind, guys, we've covered our two topics. We've got Trudeau investigating himself, of course. He's got his lifelong friend, cottage buddy and ski buddy, heading up a special rapporteur, which sounds like a fake word, to look into the Chinese collusion. The Chinese collusion that CSIS has told you full out exists, and they've been briefed on it ever since Brian Mulroney. This special rapporteur, his childhood friend, is going to figure out whether or not the allegation deserves an investigation. I don't think we need to hold our breath to figure out what he's going to say. Even if he decides it does involve an investigation, it will be done through Parliament. So there's that. Just like when the RCMP screws up and pulls a psyop and gets caught and kills a bunch of people, they just asked their cop buddies in a different province to look into what they did and figure out if they screwed up. Just like in Newfoundland, when the RNC goes out of their jurisdiction and kills a citizen in his own home by gun, an unarmed citizen, they will simply just ask another police force to look into it and see if they screwed up, figure out that they didn't, and move on with their day. End of story. So Trudeau investigates himself. That's fantastic. And Ukraine inches closer to defeat. Guys, if you're at all interested in what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, which you should be, it is a metaphor, it is a proxy, and it is a real life symbolism of what is taking place globally. Pay attention. Look into BRICS. We've done videos on it. We've got Kim Iverson has done videos on it. Redacted has done videos on it. Other alternative platforms are telling you, screaming about BRICS. Pay attention, sort yourself out. And that brings us to a wrap, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for participating. If you've got it in you to share it out, we'd appreciate it. We've got all of our links in the comments there now. Thanks a lot for listening. And as always, guys, before I leave, you people, you stay sovereign.